Colonel Learning McClung. Special guest, please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel, retired, Michael McClung.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Special thanks to the family and friends, fellow staffers who have joined us, people who've traveled around. I met some folks traveled from Belgium, Stuttgart. Thank you for coming. Thank you, of course, General Corcoran. Thank you. Appreciate it. And congratulations on your promotion. Pistol, thank you. Good to see you. It's good to officiate a ceremony for your brother because you get to see family members. I flew over on the plane with our dad, which was great. I get to see my nephews, Aaron and Sean, my niece, Madison. Yesterday, Aaron rode his bike for the first time, so I got to see that. That was great. Good job, Aaron. And of course, my sister-in-law, Chanel, good to see you. Chris thinks we're here for his ceremony. We're really here to eat some of Chanel's cakes. So if you haven't gone to chanelscakecreations.com, you need to do so. Right? It's good to be back in Germany. I was stationed at Spangalen for 3 years, back during WW Kosovo. Just a couple years ago, I stood right here and did a ceremony for one of our airmen when I was active duty. It was a re-enlistment. And one of our sharper troops on our team came up to me right before the ceremony. Colonel McClung, we've got to find a new spot. Somebody put graffiti on the wall back there and it looks terrible. So, of course, her call sign was Berlin after that. But I think it's fitting that we're doing a ceremony in front of the wall here, a marker of the end of the Cold War, because a lot of airmen, as you know, helped in that war, the Cold War. Chris and I are blessed with two great parents. Our father is here, like I said, 23-year active duty, veteran of the Cold War, most notably during the hot part of the Cold War called Vietnam. You remember the history books, Linebacker 2. Our dad flew on night 1. 27 surface-to-air missiles were shot at him. His 3-ship formation, only 2 planes came back, and only 1 got his bombs on target. That was our father's plane. You may remember Derek Thomas, a linebacker, played football for the Chiefs. His father died on that mission, and our father was nominated or received a Distinguished Flying Cross for that part of the Cold War, if you will. And if I read the papers correctly, I guess we've got a new Cold War, and all of you are on the front line. So thank you for your service and your excellence. Excellence is a core value, and I think we can draw a direct line from those Cold War airmen to our father, to Chris's excellence today as an airman. And that's what I'm going to talk about briefly, is how Chris, my brother, embodies excellence as an airman. Now, when I was trying to figure out how to do this, I was going to say, I was trying to decide, should I bring out some dirt, right? Because I'm his brother, I got a lot of good dirt. You guys are his, fellow staffers. Plenty of dirt, right? Or should I be serious? Because Chris has a lot of serious things in his record. So, like any overzealous weapons officer, I've decided to do both, right? So first, let me start with the programs. The programs say the ceremony is for some guy named Jay Christopher. Who is that? My parents named my only brother John. We grew up calling him Chris. He goes by Miles, but the program says Jay Christopher. That's an inside family joke. Chris changes his name to suit the events that he's participating in. I guess today is a Jay Christopher day. This big, strong combat warrior who is providing protection for America and the coalition, providing that very blanket that we all sleep under every night, that blanket of freedom. Once wasn't so big and once wasn't so strong. In fact, he needed a blanket of protection, not from his big brother. I'm talking a literal blanket of protection. I have in my hands the very blanket my little brother used to walk around with when we were kids. He never went anywhere without it. He slept with it. He ate with it. He did everything with this very blanket. Took it to school his first year of school. So I kid. It is a true statement that he did use a blanket. This is not it. We couldn't get it. It's back in storage. This is, in this LVC world we live in, this is a constructive model. You could say this is maybe a summary of the original blanket's principal conclusions. How about that? Right? But he did use a blanket, and I guess I bring that up because I think that Chris went from using a blanket to providing a blanket of freedom, and that started on his first assignment at Dyess Air Force Base in Texas. He did lots of things there, great things. The most impressive part of his career, I would argue, and it's because he continued the tradition of air power that our family has, started with our father, and I think his time at Dyess explains why he's a colonel today. Two things stand out to me. The first was on his first deployment after 9/11. He flew 4 intense sorties as part of Operation Anaconda over Afghanistan. Many of you remember Anaconda. At the time, it was the largest ground offensive of the war, and many of our soldiers on the ground were displaced, separated from the protection of their parent units on the battlefield that had no clear front lines. They were in mortal danger. To save lives, the B-1 bomber would be pressed into service as a close air support platform, something that had not been done on that scale since Vietnam. Chris led a team of airmen in solidifying B-1 tactics for close air support using the GPS-guided Joint Direct Attack munition, something that was brand new at the time. And he personally dropped over 100 tons of ordnance and saved the lives of hundreds of displaced soldiers, and was nominated for a single sortie air medal. For one of those sorties, he was nominated for the medal, but he flew 4 more, and I think it's a pride example of how he embodied excellence as an airman. This would not be the last time Chris would do the unthinkable. And by that I mean he would lead B-1s into battle again to save soldiers' lives in close air support. Something that was unconventional. The conventional wisdom was that Anaconda was a fluke. A B-1 can't do close air support. But defeating unconventional thinking takes unconventional airmen like Chris. Chris knew that effective close air support simply requires the 3 things that any good bombing sortie demands. The right weapon on the right target at the right time. So 4 years after Anaconda, after Chris had transferred from Dyess to Ellsworth, Chris was the deputy commander for a mission that would become the largest close air support mission since Vietnam, Operation Turkey Bowl. You may remember that in Iraq. This was when 100 Iraqi insurgents had dug themselves in just west of Baghdad in the aqueduct system, and they were using it as a staging area for their weapons, and they were doing a lot of damage to our coalition forces. Think Japan, Iwo Jima, Saipan, World War II type of thing. And our coalition forces were taking a lot of casualties. So, once again, Chris, with his B-1 team, developed a tactic for close air support. This time, it was a 2-ship tactic. Never before had B-1s been used in 2-ship formations to do close air support. Also, this sortie was unique because on the day of the mission, there was cloud cover, so that laser-guided bomb aircraft could not drop through the weather. So Chris and his team figured out a way that the B-1 could take their radars, map the target, coordinate with the ground troops, and put bombs on target. Over 48 2000 bombs, killing half the insurgents and destroying the weapons cache. Now that's truly transformational, and in my mind, it marked the point in Chris's career where he transformed from being that little kid I knew back then, to being the warrior that you know today. From being the little kid in the 3rd grade classroom who couldn't sit still, to being the combat hero that I know and love. I talk about the 3rd grade because I used to walk by Mrs. Osborne's classroom, and she would have Chris sitting over by himself in the corner because he couldn't sit still all the time. And now look at him today. He can't sit still. Actually, he's transformed. He transformed from that little kid who couldn't sit still to a bit of a nerd, right? To the guy who loved the calculus teacher in high school that everybody hated. To a guy who went on to NC State to get his electrical engineering degree. A true transformer. just like the little toy he used to play with when he was a kid. Now this is the actual Transformer, okay? We had to pry it out of my mother's hands because she keeps his room like a shrine to Chris. It's exactly how he left it. Am I right? It's exactly, and this Transformer sits in the same spot that he left it when he left high school to go to college, because yes, in high school he was still playing with Transformers. Now, all of those combat exploits happened when Chris was a young captain, but the most transformational thing that happened to him was meeting the love of his life, Chanel, my sister-in-law. They met when Chanel was a young company grade officer herself and married in 2004. So after years of providing close air support, Chris found in Chanel someone to provide him some close ground support and transformed his life forever. Now, mind you, Chanel quickly revoked his mission commander credentials after they got married. There was a new sheriff in town. There was a regime change, one for the better. But they've been married since 2004, and it's been great to know Chanel and the family. Look, I can go on and on. Chris has done some great things to embody excellence. Between Dyess and Ellsworth, he attended the highly selective weapons school, arguably the toughest and most prestigious endeavor outside of combat that the attendees will face. He came back to weapons school to be an instructor, certifying him as the best tactician in the field, and was voted the best instructor by multiple classes. He sat down at one point during his career with the 4-star general in charge of Central Command and convinced the general that the B-1 would be more effective if it used a targeting pod. A year later, they did so and increased their lethality in the Middle East. He would start on his strategic bona fides with a master's degree from the National Intelligence University and learned about the intelligence professionals that, made all that great air power happen. I'm an intel guy, so I get a plug in there. Most recently, he cemented his strategic prowess with his 3rd master's degree by attending Air War College. Along the way, at some point, he was picked to be the deputy director of the 4-Stars Commanders Action Group at Air Combat Command. People kid me because I was the CAG director at the time, and they said, "Oh, MC, you got your brother that job." I didn't. I didn't want him to get the job because he would show me up. I told my boss that, but my boss said, who lives not too far from me in San Antonio now, he says, "Hey, I should have got your brother to begin with instead of wasting my time with you." And that's a true statement. But Chris would say that his highlight, I think, of his entire career was being a squadron commander. He went back to the weapons school to command the B-1 Weapons Squadron and turn the JASSM missile from a pre-programmed fly-the-black-line weapon to a dynamic force of flexible lethality that it is today. I could go on and on, but I'll conclude by saying this. I think the mark of an airman who embodies excellence is in the number of fingerprints they leave on the fabric of our Air Force. And Chris has dozens. Chris is an excellent brother, an excellent son, husband, father, and an airman who embodies excellence. And it's an honor to stand here today and call him Colonel. But like I said, I'm here for the cake. So come on up here and let's get this over with.
Special guests, please stand for the promotion of Lieutenant Colonel John McClung.
Publish the order.
Attention to orders. The President of the United States, acting upon the recommendation of the Secretary of the Air Force, has placed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, integrity, and abilities of Lieutenant Colonel John C. McClung. In view of these special qualities and his demonstrated potential to serve in the higher grade, Lieutenant Colonel McClung is authorized to assume the grade of Colonel, United States Air Force, effective 1 April 2019, by order of the Secretary of the Air Force.